Welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. I'm your host, Carl Za. And today, to co-host with me, we have the multiple returning guests, Mr. Xiangyu, the Taiwanese communist rapper that most of you are already familiar with. Today, we're here to do a reaction video because I did a reaction video with Daniel Dumbrill and Brian on the ridiculous pro-war propaganda coming out of 60 Minutes Australia on the coming war with China. And, just so happens that YouTube algorithm then recommends me the next video from 60 Minute, another China piece, another ridiculous propaganda. But this video is short. It's only 18 minutes. So I just thought we can do a very quick reaction video to it because there's what presented in this video can be easily debunked by a very quick Google search. So without you ready? You ready for this, Xiangyu? Okay, let's do this.
It's no scoop to tell you the Chinese regime is thin-skinned. Anyone criticizing Beijing does so at their own peril and can expect immediate and often heavy-handed payback. And it's not just foreigners who face the consequences. Desmond Shum is a Chinese tycoon who used to be feted at the highest levels of the Communist Party. The businessman could do no wrong until 4 years ago, when he and his equally prominent ex-wife inexplicably tumbled out of favour. Now Desmond is a pariah of the state. So he's decided to fight back by revealing the many secrets of China's elite leaders. Chinese business tycoon Desmond Shum is a marked man. These days, he lives in the United Kingdom with his 12-year-old son, a long way from China. But he says that's no guarantee of safety after his unprecedented decision to publish a book detailing the disappearance of his ex-wife, billionaire Whitney Duan, in Beijing. He knows telling her story will make him a target for one of the most brutal totalitarian regimes in the world. Desmond, thanks very much for talking to us. Your publishers have been quite paranoid about the security surrounding the location that you are currently speaking to me from. Are you genuinely worried about your safety?
There's sufficient reason to be worried about it. From the moment I decided to publish the book and then going forward, I basically, may I use the word, sign my life away.
Do you think that even in the UK, you are at risk? Is it possible for these people to get to you in that way? Or is that being melodramatic?
No, I think the way to look at it is, a party state that can lock up a woman in a dark cell and throw away the key for 4 years is capable of all evils. So, just before I came over, in the last few days, I was talking to my partner now and said, well, let's review my wills. If something happened to me, make sure all things are taken care of.
So, this is you want to just get into the meat of it, or you want to wait till the more dramatic moments?
So do you want me to just kind of introduce who Whitney Duan is?
Maybe let's go. Let's play. Let's see what more he has to say first.
Okay.
About his ex-wife.
In 2017, Whitney Duan, one of China's richest women, became one of China's countless disappeared. Under the reign of President Xi Jinping, celebrities, academics, media figures like Australian television anchor Cheng Lai, and even China's richest man, Jack Ma, have simply vanished. Their fate is a state secret. That is, until now.
Jack Ma's fate's not really a state secret. He's been seen around. lately. It's
Yeah, I mean he's not, he has made public appearance since then. I mean, this is, he's not, locked up in some dang cell somewhere.
just Chinese culture. If you're in part of a scandal, you just kind of disappear from public eye for a while. I mean, say what you will about it. Different cultures have different ways of dealing with these things. Like, you remember the Edison Chin scandal from back in like what 2007 2008. Basically, for those who don't know, he's like a Hong Kong superstar who went to get his computer fixed, and then the people who fixed his computer found a bunch of pictures of him, doing things in the bedroom with a bunch of other Hong Kong celebrities, and then those pictures leaked. So then I mean, it was a huge scandal. So he disappeared from public eye for quite a while. He went to the US and kind of just laid low. But did people back then say, "Oh, the Chinese authorities disappeared him, and his fate's a state secret"? I mean, it's the same thing, right? Similar, like what happened to Jack Ma. Okay, maybe it's okay. It's not exactly similar. There's some corruption involved in, but I'm just saying his disappearance from the public eye is something similar. And if you describe that as a state secret, then Edison Chen's exile to the U.S. when the scandal was going down could be described as a state secret
And
as
they
well.
also show the picture of the famous Chinese actress Fan Bingbing, right? And Fan Bingbing's case is pretty well known. She got in trouble for tax evasion, and after, and she has since again reappeared in the public. After after the tax bureau fined her and levy a hefty fine. So it's not like these people just got disappeared into void. And the other Australian broadcaster they brought out in the show, she, again, her case was a specific case. She was charged with spy charges. So all these people, it's not like they just disappear. We don't know why. There's always a specific reason. They're either being charged with tax evasion, spy charges, or in case of Jack Ma, he probably didn't want to be in the spotlight for a while for reasons. And okay, so uh, at this point, maybe we can introduce who his ex-wife really is, because at this point I decided, okay, who is this Whitney Duan, right? This guy's ex-wife that was supposedly locked up in a dark room and the authority threw away the keys. So here I went to the trusty Google, right? I just did a Google search on Whitney Duan, hopefully to pull something out up. And the first article is Chinese billionaire Whitney Duan calls ex-husband 4 years. So this is basically the same article as this video, but there's actually a Wikipedia entry on Duan Weihong, right? Just a couple
Duan
links
Weihong.
down. Right, Duan Weihong
Want to
is
explain what her name means? It's kind of ironic. She's like
okay. Go ahead. You go ahead.
Wei Hong. Wei is like 伟大, like as in like great, and Hong is like red. So I mean, it's a pretty communist era name.
Yeah, because she was born in 1966, right in the middle of the Cultural Revolution. During that time, a lot of the names are named like that. Her name is basically the Great Redness.
走资派还在走. The
Yeah.
capitalist rotors are still running.
Yeah, and so she is also known as Whitney Duan, is a Chinese billionaire who is currently missing, believed to be held captive by Chinese Communist Party investigator. And if you look at the link, the reference, it's her husband Desmond Shang, missing Mughal from Wire China, retrieved September 19th, 2021. So it's very recent allegation. But according to the 2018 report from New York Times, Duan was detained in 2017. So I click on this reference to the New York Times article. There's two. There's one that's in New York Times Chinese, and there's one that's it's from Deutsche Welles, I guess. But if you click on it, I went to the English version so people can see. The corruption inquiry draws near to the former Chinese prime minister, And it talks about the authority in China have detained a wealthy investor who went into business with relatives of the previous prime minister, a sign that the anti-corruption campaign initiated 5 years ago by President Xi Jinping may again be closing on a former top leader. And just a couple paragraphs down, it says Miss Duan, also known as Whitney Duan, was a central figure in a 2021 investigation
2012.
by, I'm sorry,
2012.
2012, I'm sorry, was a central figure in a 2012 investigation by the New York Times that showed Mr. Wen's relatives controlled assets worth at least $2.7 billion USD. So I click on that link to the 2012 New York Times article, and this article is the article titled "Billions in Hidden Riches for Family of Chinese Leader." So this is actually a infamous article that got New York Times banned from China. The New York Times detail basically the personal wealth of the relatives of Wen Jiabao, then the prime minister of China, in 2012, just before he stepped down. And the explosive scoop is that through his wife and relatives, his family control an asset of at least 2.7 billion. So I did a search on this page for Duan, right? The person in question. And the first thing entry I came up with is Duan Weihong, a wealthy businesswoman whose company Taihong was investment vehicle for the Ping An shares held by the prime minister's mother and other relatives, said the investments were actually her own. Miss Duan, who comes from the prime minister's hometown and is a close friend of his wife, said the ownership of the share was listed in the name of Mr. Wen's relative in an effort to conceal the size of Miss Duan's own holding. Nothing shady going on over there. And when I invested in Ping An, I didn't want to be written about, Miss Duan said. So I had my relative find some other people to hold these shares for me. And this is just not any average people. These are the relatives, mothers of former prime minister of China, Wen Jiabao. Right? I mean, this is so this really tells you uh who Wei Hong is, and later I keep on searching for Duan, right? In the later entry, it tells about her personal background story, the tycoons. In the late 1990s, Duan Weihong was managing an office building and several other properties in Tianjin, the prime minister's hometown in northern China, through her property company Taihong. She was in her 20s, had studied Nanjing University Science and Technology. Around 2002, Miss Duan went into business with several relatives of Wen Jiabao, transforming Wen Jiabao is the former prime minister of China, transforming her property company into an investment vehicle of the same name. The company helped make Miss Duan very wealthy. And there's more. There's okay. So here, established in Tianjin, Taihong had spectacular returns. In 2002, the company paid about 65 million to acquire a 3% stake in Ping An before its initial public offering, according to corporate records and Miss Duan's graduate school thesis. 5 years later, those shares were worth 3.7 billion, right? And yes, and this is a very, and the list goes on. There's uh there's like a whole very detailed. I mean, just for the background of this New York Times story, because this was actually a famous New York Times story. Um, in 2012 was a political transition period in China. It's supposed to for the older generation to step down, and the new generation headed by Xi Jinping was supposed to take power. And there was a lot of power struggle in the background. You know, most famously with Bo Xilai, who was the party secretary of my hometown Chongqing. and one of his backer was a member of the Politburo, Zhou Yongkang, who is the head of the police and head of the kind of the internal. He was a head of MSS, I believe. So the ministry. What is it? He handled all kind of the internal security in China, and Zhou Yong. And at that time, you see a lot of leaks into the Western press. So I don't believe for a minute that New York Times, with its reporters, many of them barely literate in Chinese, got the scoop on their own. Right? They receive all this information and all these dirt on Wen Jiabao leaked to them by their by Wen Jiabao's adversaries in the party, and most likely from Zhou Yongkang's faction. Very soon after this, Zhou Yongkang, Bo Xilai, they all got arrested. Zhou Yongkang on corruption charges, and Bo Xilai because he was trying to cover up for his wife's murder. And so this is a background of that New York Times story. It doesn't mean the story is not true, but this is how and it has a very detailed art piece section specifically on Whitney Duan, how she is very central figure in this Wen Jiabao's family's business dealings, right? I mean, you can make your own mind how she made her billions. But okay, let's keep going with this video.
Yeah, I think it's also notable to mention that when Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign, a lot of the people are like people close to, I mean, like the Jiang Zemin clique, the Wen Jiabao clique, those people, right?
I mean, one of the things should be noted for people who are not familiar with China before Xi was during Xi's predecessor, especially during the Jiang Zemin era and then the Hu Jintao Wen Jiabao era, there was a lot of corruption, right? I mean, you mentioned to me somebody you knew that told you that what is that they told you?
If you accidentally killed somebody in China back during that time, and you don't want to get into trouble, and you had the right connections. Keyword is you had the right connections, so you're like criminal underworld. You know how much it costs to settle these things out of court and just not get arrested?
How much?
Around $5,000.
Okay, so this person would know, right? Because he was actually he actually did commit murder. Did he do time for it?
He
I feel like I need to blur out my face now.
No, you don't have to give details. You can just you just somebody but did he do it? But
he's
he
done
was
20
arrested,
years.
right?
He's done, no, not in the mainland. He ran to Hong Kong and then like escaped to Taiwan.
That's right, because mainland China didn't have a extradition treaty with Hong Kong, and that was one of the focus that kicked off the Hong Kong protests in 2019, is because
Yeah.
all these criminals from mainland, they can just escape to Hong Kong, or all these criminals can just do crimes in mainland and then just come back and they'll be safe.
Yeah, well, he's done like 20 years time total in Taiwan.
Okay, so he did serve his time, but not in mainland.
Not for what he did in the mainland, but I think he was involved in like the drug trade there. I didn't ask too much because I mean I didn't really want to ask questions, but he
Sure.
just kind of shared because he just came to the US like a week ago, and he doesn't, and like everyone at the restaurant is like,
you don't have to share too much details, just somebody you know.
I was like the first Chinese speaker that he encountered like in the kitchen, so he felt that he felt that he felt like he was a mute for a whole week. So he's just happy that there was another Chinese speaker, and we made conversation, and one thing led to another, and he just started telling me all these stories. So yeah.
So I can attest to this because when in 2019, when I was traveling through China,
You killed somebody and then you paid $500 to, and then you didn't, and then $500 didn't work, so you had to run away to Indonesia.
okay, that's not true. I was because of my internet notoriety, I was invited. I met up with one of my follower who happens to be the Chinese businessman who took Elon Musk and Tesla to court in China. So his story was that he was one of these Chinese investor who buys up all these domain names and register all these brand names way in advance in hoping some company will he registered in China, right? And then hoping these brands somehow will be taken at some point, and then people have to buy it out from them. So he registered Tesla in both English and Chinese in China in 2006. So when Tesla wanted to do business in China, they approached him and tried to buy him off, but they lowballed him on an offer, so he refused. At this point, Tesla hired a Hong Kong intermediary to handle the negotiation. And the next thing he knows, he was arrested by the authority in local authority in Guangzhou and thrown in jail for 5 months. Because this was a kind of they use a loophole in the Chinese judiciary at the point where you can be arrested up to, I forgot, it was a 6 month or 12 month without like a formal charge. And so he was locked up basically as a pressuring tactic, forcing him to negotiate, to accept Tesla's offer. And in the end, he backed out because he just had a newborn baby, and he thought okay, the extra money is not worth it. So he made a separate settlement with Elon Musk. And and that was a kind of the corrupted that's level of corruption in China. Basically, this Hong Kong intermediary just passed some money to some local officials in Guangzhou, and they found a excuse to lock him up. They don't even have an excuse. They don't need to provide an excuse. They just locked him up for 5 months. So he knows that this is kind of the power they have over him. And he was very bitter through the experience.
Wouldn't you be bitter?
Yeah.
You get thrown in jail for 5 months for not doing anything wrong just because some like South African guy pays some official money.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of the level of corruption before Xi Jinping came to power. This is the context.
The fact that there are like posters everywhere in China on like combating corruption is basically the CPC's admission that okay, things were pretty messed up for quite a while before recently.
Yeah. I mean, Xi Jinping's anti-corruption campaign is actually very
popular.
popular on the grassroots level. There might be some people like on the millionaire level that not very happy about it.
If you're a gangster or you're a billionaire or millionaire, you might not be too happy, but everyone else is pretty happy because I mean, so much of this stuff went on for so long. You see these people who kind of like they're bad people. They had the right connections and they're not honest people. They don't make their wealth through honest means. And you see them just doing whatever they wanted while, regular people's lives, I mean, they were improving, but not at that rate. And I mean, it's just most people don't like that stuff. Most people don't. People like a fair society in general.
Yeah. Okay, let's continue this.
And what happens to them?
Most of them, appears maybe like a year or two and come out and then plead guilty to whatever the states charged them, right? And then I think that's a few that's still in disappearance.
Desmond, any of the people that you know, have any of them been able to make a comeback and be rehabilitated, so to speak?
No, not anyone I know of. It's once you've been taken, you sort of tainted in the system, and nobody in the system wants to associate themselves with you.
So it's not a system where you can be forgiven?
No. Once you're out, you are generally out.
Desmond Shum has participated in business at the highest levels in communist China and is revealing for the first time a system where money means nothing. Billionaires are expendable, and blood ties to the Communist Party are valued above all else.
Why is it whenever they mention blood ties to the Communist Party are valued above all else, they always show like footage from the Mao era?
Yeah, and also the what the underlying premise is that, oh my god, money means nothing. Because in the Western society we know money will fix everything, right? I mean, how could it be like that? It's Why is it such a crime that billionaires are expendable and can be held accountable? And also the part about the bloodline to the Red Revolutionary. That's just plainly not true. I already gave the example of Bo Xilai, who was a former communist secretary of Chongqing, my hometown. He was a princeling, just like Xi Jinping. They are at the same level. His father was one of the his father was one of the communist revolutionaries. A famous one that was basically the same peer of Deng Xiaoping during 1980s. He is now in jail. He's now Bo Xilai is now rotting in jail. So the part about where communist bloodline is all that matters, that claim is not true. Okay, let's just skip.
Another thing that I want to add, the anti-corruption campaign. Who are the targets? A lot of them are like communist blind people. And the other thing I want to mention is, I mean, Western imperialists have never been like too friendly with China. They've always like kind of looked at it with a lot of distrust, even in like the 2000s. But notice how the West tolerated China the most when it was at its most corrupt, and not just foreign governments. You're also talking about like loser expats in China. I'm not saying all expats in China are losers. I'm saying among the expats in China, there are certain segments of losers. And when China was corrupt, and as long as they had some money, they could do whatever they wanted.
I think what you mean to say is some are good people.
I think most of them are decent people. I mean, but you have some people like, Lawa 86, Serpent ZA. Notice how like they loved China when it was super corrupt. And then as soon as like the anti-corruption campaign really kicked off, that's when their tone started shifting. I don't think it's a coincidence. Okay, continue.
What do you think Whitney is worth? What would her net asset wealth be, roughly?
Couple billion, 2-3 billion.
2 or 3 billion. So money alone in this system in China cannot protect you.
Money comes from nothing. Your bloodline, your being a red aristocrat bloodline protects you. Everyone else is expendable.
Everyone else is expendable. So if you're not a relative of others in the party machine, in the Communist Party from a generation or 2 generations before, then you're on the back foot already.
Yeah, you may have a good ride, you may not have a good ride, and the tide may turn for nothing you control. And that's obviously, her case exemplify that.
If she could be simply taken and made to disappear with her contacts at her level, then nobody is safe.
Absolutely.
Why do they call it a disappearance? She was arrested and thrown into.
And she's like, oh my god, at her level, if she could be taken, nobody is safe. It's like, why should billionaires be safe? I mean, like, the billionaires are pretty safe in US for sure.
You're not gonna see Jeff Bezos get arrested. I mean, you had what's his name, like Epstein, like got away with whatever he. I mean, it was only because.
Yeah. I mean, Epstein got away for it for so many years.
I feel like he only got caught because like it was because of political motivations, not because like I don't know.
Yeah, and this is it's yeah, and also I like to say that. So I read the first article on New York Times, the 2018 New York Times article on Whitney Duan. It says until last year. So this actually specifically said that another person close to her says she might have been detained as part of a corruption investigation into former Politburo member Sun Zhencai, not Mr. Wen or his relatives. Until last year, Mr. Sun appeared to poise to join the party's highest echelon of power that had been considered a possible successor to Prime Minister Li Keqiang. But in July, he was removed from his post as a top official in the southwestern city of Chongqing, expelled from the party and under investigation. And again, that's my hometown. Chongqing is cursed, man. Chongqing, anybody who is served as a general party secretary in Chongqing in the last decade had their political career cursed. So I look into this Sun Zhencai character. So I googled him up first in Wikipedia, and then get his Chinese name, and then look at the Chinese wiki. It turns out this guy was arrested for corruption. Again, this is a refutation of saying if you are part of the communist hierarchy, you are you are not vulnerable. This is not true.
Another ironic name what is it? Whitney Duan Duan Weihong. His name Sun Zhencai. What does it mean? It means political talent.
Yes.
He obviously didn't have enough to not get in trouble.
Yeah, he was nabbed for corruption and also for he one of the things that was reported on Sun Zhencai is that during the anti poverty alleviation effort, he will he will fudge the data, for people who are still poor. He will claim they have own more property than already do, and claim they have been already alleviated from poverty. And that is the one thing that he got nabbed for. So I actually watched former what is it, PBS documentary on China's poverty alleviation, which has been pulled from PBS because our congressman said it's red CCP propaganda. During the that anti-poverty during the poverty alleviation documentaries, there's a part where people from Chongqing University, students, are recruited to go to these poor rural villages and do audits. To make sure these communist officials are not lying in their reports. So this is how Sun Zhencai, this person, got caught, right? I mean, he got caught lying, and for corruption. So this is kind of the people that also Miss Duan was associated with, and this is not from communist report sources. This is New York Times, right? Not a publication known to be friendly to the Communist Party. So okay, let's go.
And that sort of corruption has serious repercussions. I mean, you look at like the famines that happened during the Great Leap Forward. I mean, yeah, there were part of it was because of the climate, but another part of it was because local officials were lying about grain output so they could get promotions. And this also shows that that sort of idea that we have of China being this sort of dystopian, like Big Brother, like Xi Jinping like micromanages everything. I mean, if this can actually go on, it shows that like the central government actually doesn't have like that much, like it doesn't have the resources to constantly monitor like every single like locality, is what I'm saying.
I mean, people have this misconception of China always been this like monolith, right? With a snap of finger from Xi Jinping, everything get propagated to the lowest level. That's just not true. For the longest time, China's political system has been very decentralized. The local official have a lot of power to interpret the directives coming from the top. For example, the anti-poverty the poverty alleviation, right? They have a matrix system. The local official get judged on how well they perform. So they also have an incentive to lie to make it better than it appear in order to get promotion. But what's different this time is now they're actually have some audit system in place. They have these idealistic students from Chongqing University going to the villages to double check. But anyway, so let's continue with the video.
Absolutely.
Before things turned bad, they were very, very good for Desmond and Whitney. They built the largest air cargo logistics facility in China and had
Can I add a comment? Like they just don't, even though they're super rich, they just don't look very happy.
lucrative real estate interests. Whitney was not part of the communist establishment. Rather, she was a self-made entrepreneur, supremely skilled at cultivating and maintaining relationships with communist officials, which were critical to any business success.
Why are they showing
Those
him?
contacts went to the very top. Her key ally was the wife of China's former second-in-charge, Premier.
Do you see what they did? They were talking about like clearly Xi Jinping wasn't in power at that level back when all of this was going on, but they're putting his image there so then the Western viewers will associate this level of corruption with him and his current government.
Premier Wen Jiabao. When you were doing business in China, when you and your former wife were building your business,
Yes.
did you ever think during all that time when you were connected to party officials that she or you could be in physical jeopardy?
Not really. I mean, in the back of my head, I always have a sense of that there is a danger involved when you're at this level, but not really. So we were extra careful, during. So, some official, because they are so blatantly corrupt and then we just avoid them because we don't want to sweep up with what they're doing, and then we always want to make sure absolutely we're not going to get caught in this kind of system.
So while you were making all that money, you were very aware, acutely aware of the underlying corruption and made sure that you weren't part of that.
Yes.
Okay,
But
stop,
everything
stop.
changed for
Stop. So I look up the Sun Zhencai, who actually has been arrested and charged with corruption. I'm just looking at the wiki right now, the Chinese wiki. It says Sun Zhencai, he 将北京顺义价值几十亿的地皮以极低价格输送给总理温家宝夫人张贝利。So Sun Zhencai, while he was I guess in charge of Beijing and surrounding areas, he gave the land that's worth several billion with very low price, give it to this allegation is he give it to the Wen Jiabao's wife Zhang Peili, and of course that he didn't. This also is tied together with Duan Weihong, because Duan Weihong is the very close friend of Wen Jiabao's wife Zhang Peili, and this is how Zhang 19 here again. You refer to the New York Times article, 2018 February, New York Times. Sun Zhencai and Wen Jiabao's family, and also the Duan Weihong have very close ties, and this is and Duan Weihong got nabbed according to New York Times because Sun Zhencai was charged with corruption. Okay, go ahead. And so this kind of what he said was he claimed that there's corruption all around him, but him and his wife Duan Weihong had nothing to do with it, which is obviously
They are the corruption.
Yeah.
Desmond and Whitney when Xi Jinping came into power and cracked down on corruption and political rivals. By then, their relationship as a couple was over, and Desmond moved to London with their young son. He urged Whitney to leave China, but she refused. In 2017, Whitney disappeared off the streets of Beijing. There was no acknowledgement she'd been taken by the government or any legal charge.
Notice the way they word it. I mean, I don't know how she was arrested, but I doubt. But they make it sound like she was just walking down like that particular road, and like people in an unmarked vehicle just like drove up next to her and like whisked her away in a van. I'm sure it was more like they went to her house and knocked on her door, and she left with them.
She thought she was protected and just too much confidence into the system.
So your former wife starts off with the right contact, and that contact then becomes on the nose slightly with Xi, and then your former wife's in trouble. This must all be a very...
Isn't he admitting here that she was very corrupt? Like he was like, oh yeah, she felt she was overconfident because she felt she was protected. Like, why would anyone feel that way unless they had the right connections? You know.
Yeah. Machiavellian game. Loyalties must change quite swiftly and behind the scenes.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Especially with Xi Jinping, the roughness of his regime. He take a country on a different course and a different speed, right? And I think that really make this the whole system more deadly.
Desmond heard nothing from Whitney or anyone else about her fate for 4 years. That is, until a couple of weeks ago, on the eve of the publication of his book. Let me just get this right. Your former wife gets taken, literally vanishes out of thin air. 4 years later, all of a sudden, she's released.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It's kind of miraculous and kind of very coincidental, if I put it mildly, right?
Whitney called you first time in 4 years. When she made that call to you, what did she say? One of China's richest women, Whitney Duan, disappeared from the streets of Beijing in 2017 and was not seen or heard from in 4 years. That is, until her ex-husband, Desmond Shum, defied the repressive regime and took the enormous personal risk of writing a book, putting the spotlight on her disappearance. His fears for his safety were confirmed when, days before the book was due to be released, he got a chilling phone call. Whitney called you first time in 4 years. When she made that call to you, what did she say?
I think the purpose of the...
As chilling as the phone call might have been, it wasn't as scary as what happened to Jiang Nan when he wrote that unauthorized biography on Jiang Jingguo.
For people who don't know, that's a Taiwanese author who thought he was safe in United States, and he wrote the biography of Jiang Jingguo, and the KMT operatives intelligence actually assassinated him
in his own garage.
States. In United States, and but just so the whole show made it seems like we don't really know what his wife was in for. But we have 2 New York Times articles detailing her business dealings with the Wen Jiabao's family, and also this corrupt. So here in the first 2018 article on Whitney Duan. Ms. Duan, according to corporate records, he set up a serious company with Mr. Wen Jiabao's mother, brother, and daughter. One of her investment firm also invested in company alongside New Horizon Capital, a private equity firm run by Mr. Wen Jiabao's son, Wen Yunsong. Ms. Duan also helped several Mr. Wen's relatives, including his mother, the associate, acquire an early stake in Ping An, one of the country's largest financial service firms, before its domestic public stock offering in 2007. Those shares, which they have since sold, would have been worth almost $6 billion now. In 2012, Ms. Duan acknowledged in an interview with the Times that she was close to Prime Minister's wife and family, and that she had registered company using their names. She said she had borrowed their identification card to hide her own stakes in Ping An. This is her own quote. When I invest in Ping An, I didn't want to be written about, she said at the time. So I had my relatives to find some people to hold these shares for me. Not shady. Like I said, not shady at all. And okay, go ahead.
Coys asked me to stop the book launch. That's exactly what she said.
And you assumed during the call that it was being monitored?
Yes, I asked her that. And then I said, obviously you are telling me things because you've been asked to. And she said, no. But come on, I told her, your phone number went dead for 4 years. You are unreachable. Well, the next day of your temporary release, she said she should sign a paper of temporary release. Your phone is workable and you can call anybody anywhere in the world. That's not China.
Were there any clues for you as to whether it was or could have been a prepared script?
Yeah. Yes. Because she asked the question, she said, what would happen to our son if something happened to you? And then she followed on with the question, how will you feel if something happened to our son? I mean, that's sufficiently threatening. So that was the first call. On the second call, she was trying to incriminate me. She was like, I'm guilty of crime, and we were partners in life and business, so you must be guilty of crime too. I was like, no, I don't believe that. Name the crime. And she can't really name it. And then at the end of the call, she actually make a sentence say, well, you move on with this project, it may cost a life. And I got really angry, and I was essentially yelling to whoever was listening in. I was like, what do you mean cost a life? Whose life are we talking about here? Are we talking about my life, our son's life, or is it your life?
There's no mistaking that threat. The implication there is that you could be responsible for your son's life if you went ahead and published the book.
Yeah, it's definitely implied.
That's a terrible thing to say.
Yeah, and then coming from the mama.
Where did she go wrong? Where did Whitney go wrong, Desmond?
I would guess most likely she's associated with the wrong crowd or the wrong faction of the power struggle, or maybe she learned about something that's very inconvenient for the leadership. But then it's not a crime by itself. So you're such a nuisance, we're just gonna silence you and let you disappear.
He basically admitted that she was involved in corruption. I mean, the average Chinese person is not really involved with any faction. You know?
The numbers of missing and incarcerated have skyrocketed under Xi Jinping's reign. Among them, Australian television anchor Cheng Lai, who worked in China, has not been seen or heard from in a year. Where they are held and what happens to them is just not known. Cheng Lai, for example, it's similar to your former wife Whitney. I mean, why make these women disappear? Doesn't that demean them in the eyes of the world in a certain way?
I am guessing in a lot of this kind of situation is they want you to openly admit to certain crime they ascribe to you, and then those people are not complying. That's one possibility. Or the second thing is they want you to give up certain information, and you are not doing it. And then the way they're doing it, my Whitney, on the first call says you haven't had any information for 4 years from the outside world.
Let's assume all of this is true. Isn't this how the U.S. authorities get informants?
And also the case of Australian TV anchor Chen Lai, they didn't explain she is anchor not for the Australian wrong network, but for Chinese state television CGTN. He was an anchor for the Chinese state TV CGTN, but she was arrested on the spy charges. They didn't tell you that. She made it seem like you're some Australian BBC or ABC reporter in China that got nabbed. No, she was an anchor for the Chinese state TV CGTN, and she was nabbed because on spy charges. They didn't explain that. Anyway, go ahead.
Think of it. Her mom passed away in June. She didn't know that. She didn't know the pandemic was going on for 2 years in the rest of the world, to all of us. I mean, they intentionally cut off all information from the outside. And then as time moves on, most people give up hope because that's like no end to things, right? They wish like, okay, I would tell you anything you wanted to. I will admit to any crime you want to give it to me. just give me an end to it, right? If you send to me 10 years or 15 years, I know, okay, 15 years, I can be out. But in that situation, you're desperate because that's no end in sight, and you're completely unaware what's happening other than what they are telling you. So it's a method of terrorizing the people they have taken.
It's complete psychological control.
Yes.
The communist regime's crackdown on perceived opponents is reminiscent of past communist leaders. Xi Jinping is behaving like an emperor who is settling in for the long haul and has no plans to be overthrown.
Stop. Who has plans for their own overthrow? It's like, what kind of stupid line is that? Xi Jinping has no plans for his overthrow. Who? Which world leader have plans for their overthrow?
I think what he's trying to say is how Xi Jinping government got rid of term limits, but the thing is, every 5 years he still needs to get reelected by the NPC, by the National People's Congress. If for some reason the majority of the Congress don't, if the powers that be don't want him to be the leader anymore, he's gonna be replaced.
Yeah,
It's but yeah, I mean, you look at other countries, you look at Germany. They don't have term limits, but you don't hear them saying, "Oh, Merkel's acting like an empress." She's acting like the European version of the Dowager Cixi.
Do you think we're entering a new era of authoritarianism?
Oh yeah, absolutely, we are there, right? I mean, the
Other thing is, when they talked about how Xi Jinping's acting like an emperor, and they showed him like, in that car, telling people, 同志们好，主席好，同志们辛苦了，为人民服务. When did that start? Who started that? Deng Xiaoping.
yes. 1984 parade in the Tiananmen Square by Deng Xiaoping. I remember that because I grew up
同志们
watching
好，
that.
同志们辛苦了.
I mean, the guy just changed the constitution at will and make himself president and chairman of the party for life.
Will doing business in China ever be safe again, do you think?
As my book says, you roll your dice, red roulette.
You take your chances.
The odds are getting worse and worse now.
I think part of what they're trying to do is, because I mean, okay, your average viewer is not going to be that level of like a businessman. You might have like some people who, like Westerners who run a small business, like maybe I don't know, a small business, right? And that's what they love to do. They love like blurring the line between like, the big capitalists and like the small business owners. And then you want people like common Joes, average Joes, who might just run a mom and pop shop, who think of themselves as like business owners, to be like, oh wow, I'm so glad I'm in America where I can freely run my business, even though like, your business could kind of just tank at any time, as we've seen with COVID, and a lot of businesses tanked. And then they'll just be like, wow, like we need to, like, China's our enemy because people like us are oppressed,
Yeah, I mean, because this is not made to convince Elon Musk, right? Because
Yeah,
Elon Musk is in China making money right now as we speak. So yeah.
It's a warning to businesses in Australia keen to get a slice of the lucrative Chinese market. The exercise of communist power isn't confined to individuals, but to nations, as Australia knows only too well. The Communist Party has been punishing Australia and the Australian government ever since we dared to ask the world for an inquiry into the origins of COVID-19.
They're very paranoid. So they want to crush all dissent the world over that could possibly be a challenge of their power. And then they take on Australia because they feel like they can afford to. They're not doing that to the US, but wait until the day they are the number one economic power. They would do the same thing to the US, what they're doing to Australia.
Okay, that bullshit aside, isn't he describing what the US is doing to Cuba, to Venezuela, to Iran,
Yeah, of course.
to Gaddafi's Libya.
I mean, the other question you can flip it around is, why is Australia then carrying water for the United States? You know, when Australian trade gets affected with China, you know, U.S. keep on selling to China. All the U.S. is now taking market share away from Australian businesses by selling to China, and this is all because Australian volunteer, you know, to be U.S. deputy and to be more anti-China than U.S. I mean, so why Australia is doing this? You know, of course they're not going to ask that question.
Ultimately, they want every country to submit.
But Desmond refuses to submit, and through his story, wants the world to know the true cost of doing business in China. You know you're a marked man now for the rest of your life. Anybody in any position of authority in China will see you as the ultimate Chinese traitor.
I know that. I know that. You know, ironically, I come to this moment because my indoctrination when I was a child. When I was a child, I was reading Chinese Communist comic books, and they were always telling us, sacrifice yourself for the greater good. I believe I'm doing that.
And Desmond, what about Whitney? She is still the mother of your son. What will happen to her?
I have no clue. Whether she will stay out and still stay free, well, to an extent, it's not in my hand.
What does your son say to you? You know, Dad, I'm talking to Mum for the first time in 4 years. He's only 12 now. How does he make sense of that?
It's very, very personal. I mean, their first phone call, I mean, I remember she was asking him, how tall are you now? What's your weight now? You know, it is very touching. It's very moving. For my son, I think, I mean, obviously this experience will have a lasting impact on his personality and on his character in the long term. I just don't know what it's going to be.
I feel like being the son of these corrupt rich people has a greater impact on him than okay, they both have it. Okay, I'm not gonna try to make light of this. Like the kid is innocent, and I mean this must have like some sort of like emotional toll, play an emotional toll on him. But at the same time, I just hate how this documentary is trying to weaponize, like, you know, our natural sympathy towards children to push this whole narrative to make us not just sympathize with the child, but through sympathizing with the child, sympathize with these corrupt businessmen.
And he made himself sound like a martyr, right? It's like I believe the communist propaganda I was fed. You know, sacrifice yourself for the common good. This billionaire, do you believe this billionaire is sacrificing himself for the common good? I mean, if you really believe that the Communist Party of China was threatening his son's life, or his ex-wife's life, or his life, you know, he still went ahead to publish it. And do you really believe his motivation was to sacrifice him and his family for the common goods? I mean, I'll let you decide on that.
And it's not China's thing to like if they have like a target, you know, that somebody they want to put on trial, and if found guilty, perhaps execute. They're gonna go for him. They're gonna go for Duan Weihong. What Whitney Duan.
Yeah, Whitney Duan.
Whitney. So they're not gonna go after the son unless he inherits like some sort of business and starts engaging in the corruption himself. Then it's fair game. But he's 12. They're not. But people will believe anything about China.
They made the whole, you know, they totally didn't talk about her corruption case at all. They made it sound like Xi Jinping just this sadistic man that just for some odd reason just like to make everybody suffer. You know, like why? You know, of 1.4 billion Chinese people, why did they pick her? Right? Like. But no. They're saying no. Xi Jinping is doing this for everybody, right? So everyone in China is suffering the same treatment. So yeah, if you can't believe that, go ahead. I think it's all it's finished, no?
That's tough for you as a father, too.
Yes.
You have all the means, you have all the money in the world, and yet you can't get her out, can you? You can't do anything to extract her and get her to be with your son.
No, there's nothing other than to bring the attention of the world and put a spotlight on her. That's the best I can do.
Okay. So this again, in the end, he said it. You have all the money in the world, yeah, you can't do nothing. I mean, this is the underlying premises is that in the West, if you have money, you can do whatever you want. You can hire a good lawyer to get you out of the trouble, right? I mean, that's our common experience. How dare these commies, even disregard the wealth and the power, like the power that comes associated with wealth. How dare they?
That's why they like the corrupt days of China so much, because you could like settle a lot. Money could take care of a lot of these problems.
Yeah.
But I mean, if that went on forever and the people kept on being dissatisfied with government, I mean, it would have been bad for everybody in the end.
Yeah.
It's good they're cracking down on these things.
Yeah, I mean, one of the people say that Xi Jinping is cracking down on his political opponents. I mean, he obviously have a lot of political opponents because the anti-corruption drive have nabbed a lot of people, right? So I don't know how Xi Jinping got all these personal enemies, uh, but the fact is, on the ground, on the Chinese street, at the popular grassroots level, the anti-corruption drive is very popular with most of the Chinese masses. So I don't know, why is Australia, wringing its hand over this. It's just ridiculous. And I happened to peek over to the 60-minute Australia, their YouTube channel. It seems like they come out with one anti-China propaganda every week now, and all their videos are unfortunately have the comments turned off, because I would really like to see some comments, how people react. So this is why I decided to do up my own reaction video. So all of you guys watching, put your own comments underneath.
Comment, like, and subscribe.
Yes, for sure. Okay, so that was like a short, sweet, and 1 hour reaction.
Actually,
video.
60 minutes.
Yeah. Actually, 60 minutes. So thanks to everyone for watching. Do you have anything to add, Mr. Xiangyu?
If you're Patreon to Silk and Steel, we're gonna be resuming the Korean War series soonish. Hopefully, I've been kind of slacking off on that. Been busy with some other things and just kept on putting that on the back burner. So I apologize to everyone who's been looking forward to more episodes on that.
Yeah. So
And
we already had 2 episodes out. Episode 0, which was a background to the before the Korean War happened, and episode 1, which again more background but in the Korean context. And those are available on my Patreon site for Silk and Steel. So go to patreon.com, search Silk. The Silk and Steel podcast will be the first one on the list, and I hope you subscribe. At some time in the future, I may make one of the episode open to public, just like what I did for the Taiwan series. So for those of you who haven't watched or listened to the Taiwan history series I did with Xiangyu, most of it is all unlocked now to the public. You can either find it on YouTube or iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify.
I'll give you a
Silk and
link
Steel.
to the I'll give you a link to the YouTube playlist you can put in the description, video description for this video. This one's not going to be locked, probably, right? You're probably going to want to make this public as soon as possible.
Yeah. This one will be public. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you again for joining us on another episode of Silk and Steel podcast. Until comments, but we expect your feedback. Let us know how you think. Like, subscribe. Peace.